Imagine stepping into a crowded room where everyone wears a mask. Some masks smile, others frown, but none reveal the true face beneath. Now, picture yourself walking into this world without a mask, without deception, without pretense, without even the inclination to manipulate those around you. How long do you think you would last? How quickly would you be dismissed as naive, foolish, or weak? This is the fate of Prince Myshkin, the protagonist of The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. He is a man of unshakable honesty, boundless compassion, and a heart untainted by malice. Yet, instead of being admired for these qualities, he is ridiculed, manipulated, and ultimately broken by a society that cannot understand his goodness. But this is not just a tale from 19th century Russia. It reflects a painful truth about human nature that is still relevant today. Why do good people so often find themselves at a disadvantage? Why does sincerity invite mockery rather than respect? And most importantly, if being good leads to suffering, is it still worth it? By the end of this discussion, you will see kindness, morality, and the hidden dangers of being too good in an entirely new light. And the final insight we will explore is the most shocking of all. It will change not just how you see the world, but how you see yourself. To understand why goodness is so often mistaken for foolishness, we must first examine what society truly values. We like to believe that we admire honesty, kindness, and integrity. But do we? Or do we simply tolerate these qualities when they do not interfere with our own interests? Throughout history, those who rise to power are rarely the purely good. Instead, they are the ones who understand the complexities of human relationships, who know when to be ruthless and when to be charming, who conceal their true intentions behind carefully crafted facades. Niccolò Machiavelli in The Prince argued that a ruler must be willing to act immorally when necessary because the world does not reward goodness, it rewards results. This is why Myshkin's fate is so tragic. He either does not understand or refuses to accept the rules of the world. He does not manipulate or deceive, nor does he want to. And because of this, he is seen as an idiot, not because he lacks intelligence, but because his goodness makes him vulnerable in a society built on competition and self-interest. Think about how this applies to real life. How often do we see truly kind and honest people being taken advantage of? How many stories have we heard of good-hearted individuals betrayed by those they trusted? How many times have we felt foolish for believing in the best in others, only to be disappointed? This is not to say that the world is entirely corrupt, but it is undeniable that a certain level of cunning is often necessary for survival. Even those who consider themselves good people must sometimes compromise their values to protect themselves. And yet, despite everything, we still long for figures like Myshkin, people who are truly and unshakably good. But here's where things become even more interesting. Dostoevsky does not simply portray Myshkin as a tragic victim. His suffering is not passive. His very existence challenges those around him in ways they do not fully understand. His goodness acts as a mirror, forcing others to confront their own flaws. He does not judge them, yet his sincerity highlights their deception. His kindness exposes their selfishness. And so, rather than being embraced, he is rejected. This brings us to a fundamental question. Is it Myshkin who is the fool, or is it the world around him that has lost its way? As we continue, we will dive deeper into this paradox and explore what it truly means to be good in a world that does not seem to value goodness. And in the end, we will uncover a final truth about kindness, one that might just change the way you see everything. What makes Myshkin's story so tragic is not just the suffering he endures, but the way he is perceived. He does not see himself as a fool. He believes in love, in honesty, in the fundamental goodness of human nature. And yet, the more he tries to bring light into the lives of others, the more they see him as an outsider, someone who does not belong. But why? Why does true goodness so often create discomfort? To answer this, we must examine the way people interact with one another. Human relationships, whether personal or societal, are built on a delicate balance of power. Even in the most casual interactions, there is an unspoken negotiation happening beneath the surface. People carefully measure their words, choose their actions strategically, and adjust their behavior based on what they expect in return. It is a world of subtle manipulation, where even kindness is often given with an expectation of reciprocity. But Myshkin does not play this game. He gives without expecting anything in return. He speaks with complete honesty without calculating how his words might be received. He forgives without resentment, even when others betray him repeatedly. In a world where everyone wears a mask, he is completely unguarded. And this is precisely why people do not trust him. Psychologists have long studied cognitive dissonance, the discomfort that arises when we are confronted with truths that contradict our beliefs about ourselves. When people interact with Myshkin, he forces them to confront their own moral contradictions. They may claim to value kindness, but when faced with true, unconditional goodness, they feel exposed. Rather than accepting this uncomfortable truth, they reject the person who reveals it. Think about how we often react to exceptionally good people. We admire selfless individuals who dedicate their lives to helping others. But sometimes we also feel discomfort. We tell ourselves that they are different from us, that their level of selflessness is unrealistic, even impractical. We may even look for flaws in them, searching for evidence that they are not as pure as they seem. Why? Because accepting their goodness means questioning our own choices, our own compromises, our own moral justifications. This is exactly what happens to Myshkin. He becomes a symbol of something unattainable, an ideal that people admire in theory but reject in practice. His presence disrupts the social order, not through force but simply by existing. Dostoevsky reveals a deeper truth about human nature. We do not truly want perfect goodness in our lives. We think we do, but when faced with it, we find it overwhelming. Goodness without calculation, without boundaries, without the usual human flaws, is something that most people do not know how to handle. And so, instead of elevating the good person, society often isolates them. But does this mean that goodness is meaningless? That being a good person is a mistake? Here is where things become even more complex. Despite all the suffering he endures, Myshkin does not regret his kindness. He does not become bitter. He does not wish to change who he is. And in this, Dostoevsky offers us a profound insight. The value of goodness does not lie in how others perceive it. It does not require admiration or reward. It exists not because the world appreciates it, but because it is the right way to be. If the world rejects, ridicules, and even destroys those who are genuinely good, then why does goodness persist? The answer lies in something that cannot be easily seen or measured. It lies in the silent, often unnoticed ways in which true goodness transforms those who come into contact with it. This is why, despite everything, goodness is not weakness. It does not seek control, yet it influences. It does not fight, yet it changes. It does not demand, yet it inspires. And in the end, whether the world calls you a fool or a saint, whether you are remembered or forgotten, whether your kindness is appreciated or rejected, what matters most is that you remained who you truly are. Because in a world where deception and self-interest often rule, choosing to be good despite everything is the most powerful choice of all.